All right, let's dive in. We all spend time out in the Tennessee summers, and you know what that means, right?
Yeah, mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes. So that's what we're taking a deep dive into today. Mosquito control, specifically here in the Knoxville area. And we've been looking at some information from Critter Wranglers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, local pest control company. So I'm really curious to get your take on this. I kind of always thought of mosquitoes as just kind of a summertime nuisance, but looking at some of this information, you realize it's a little more serious than that.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's interesting because they actually say right on their website that mosquitoes are considered like the deadliest animal on Earth.
Whoa,
Yeah.
okay. That's a little more than annoying, right?
It is, yeah. It's way more than just an itchy bite. We're talking about serious diseases here.
Okay, so not just annoying, but actually dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of diseases are we talking about here specifically?
Well, in Tennessee, I think we need to be particularly aware of things like West Nile virus. Critter Wranglers really emphasizes that on their website. And I think for good reason, right?
So they're not just trying to sell bug spray. They're really trying to protect people from some real threats.
That seems to be the message, yeah. And, it's not just one generic mosquito either. Globally, there's over 3,500 species of mosquitoes, but there are about 17 that are common to Tennessee.
17. Okay. Wow. So it's not just like one kind of mosquito you got to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a whole variety of them.
There's a lot of different ones. And, each one might have its own preferences, like where it likes to breed, the times of day it likes to bite, even the types of diseases they can carry.
So you can't just have like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not.
You really have to understand what you're dealing with. I guess
Yeah.
that's where Critter Wranglers comes in. They're kind of positioning themselves as these local experts,
It
right?
seems that way, yeah.
With all this experience dealing with Tennessee's mosquito challenges,
Hmm.
and they talk about this into care system, is that something different than just the typical spraying?
Yeah, I think so. They don't get into the details on their website, but it sounds like it's more than just spraying to kill adult mosquitoes.
Hmm. So what are they doing, like setting traps or something?
Well, from what I gather, it seems like it's designed to interrupt the mosquito life cycle at multiple stages.
Oh,
So it
okay.
probably involves a combination of things like source reduction.
Source reduction.
Yeah,
I mean, getting rid of the places where mosquitoes like to breed?
exactly. So like those stagnant puddles and stuff,
Right.
that's always a key part of mosquito control.
Okay.
But it probably also involves like using larvicides.
Larvicides.
Yeah, so that targets mosquitoes in their larval stage before they even become those biting adults.
Oh, okay. So you're stopping them before they even really get going.
Right, it's a more proactive approach. And of course, they probably still use adulticides too, like the sprays that kill adult mosquitoes directly.
So it's like a multi-pronged attack.
Yeah.
Okay, so this in-care system sounds pretty sophisticated, I guess you could say. But how do they actually, put this plan into action?
Well, one thing that stood out to me was that they offer free inspections.
Free inspections.
Yeah, for mosquito treatments.
So they come to your house, they check it out,
It seems that way.
and then they figure out, like, what the best plan of attack is.
Yeah, they'd probably look for breeding sites, identify the types of mosquitoes that are present, and then they recommend a tailored solution, using their in-care system.
So it's kind of a personalized approach?
It seems like it, yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to get a picture of how they operate here. But how do we know if this approach is actually effective? Do they have any proof to back up their claims?
Well, that's where things get a little murky. They do highlight their experience and the effectiveness of their system, but they don't really give us specific data, or case studies on their website.
So a little bit of mystery there. But they do mention being a top-rated local company, so I guess that suggests they're doing something right.
That's true, yeah. Positive customer reviews are always a good sign, but yeah, to really understand how effective it is, we'd need a little more information.
Yeah, good point. It seems like we've only just scratched the surface here. There's a lot more to dig into
Absolutely.
when it comes to critter wranglers and their methods.
Yeah, we've established that they're really focused on those Tennessee-specific mosquitoes and this in-care system. But yeah, we need to look into the specifics and see what that actually means for you, the listener.
All right, listeners, stay with us. We're just getting warmed up here. Welcome back, everybody. So last time we learned that mosquitoes are more than just annoying, right? They're actually the deadliest creatures on Earth. And here in Tennessee, we've got like 17 different species of mosquitoes to worry about.
Yeah, and Critter Wranglers seemed really concerned about West Nile, especially.
West Nile virus, is that like a big concern here in Knoxville?
It's definitely something to be aware of. I mean, it's not an epidemic or anything, but there are cases reported in Tennessee every year.
Okay.
And it's not just West Nile either. Mosquitoes can transmit all kinds of nasty stuff like Zika, dengue fever, chikungunya virus.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, those itchy bites are starting to sound a lot more serious now.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget about the health risks,
Right.
but, they seem to be taking it pretty seriously with this in-care system they talk about.
Yeah, that mysterious system. They say it's highly effective, but they don't really explain how it works.
Right, it's a little vague, but we can kind of piece it together, right? We talked about source reduction, like getting rid of standing water.
Right, so the mosquitoes can't breed. I actually do that in my own back house, dump out any containers that are collecting rainwater.
Yeah, every little bit helps. But on a larger scale, they might use larvicides to treat bigger bodies of water.
Larvicides, that kills the mosquito larvae
Exactly.
before they even hatched.
Right.
So what kind of larvicides are we talking about here? Are those chemicals safe for, other animals?
That's a great question. And honestly, they don't really go into specifics on their website. They just mention using EPA-registered products.
So at least they're regulated, I guess.
Yeah, that's reassuring. But more transparency would be nice.
Yeah, I'd like to know exactly what they're using.
I agree. And, even with EPA registration, there's always that debate about the environmental impact of any pesticide.
Right, it's like a trade-off. You want to control the mosquitoes, but you also want to protect the environment.
Exactly. Finding that balance is key.
Right.
And it's not just about larvicides either. Remember, they probably use adulticides too.
Oh, right, the sprays, like when you see those trucks driving around fogging the neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
But do those sprays actually work? Like, do they really get rid of all the mosquitoes?
Well, it depends. Weather conditions can affect how well they work. The type of mosquito matters too. And even the time of day they spray can make a difference.
So it's not a guaranteed thing.
Nothing's foolproof, unfortunately.
So even if you get your yard sprayed, you still might get bitten.
It's possible. The goal is to reduce the population, not eliminate it completely.
Okay, that makes sense. So how often do you have to spray to keep the mosquitoes under control?
That's going to vary depending on how bad the infestation is and what products they're using.
So they probably tailor the treatment plan to each individual situation.
Sounds like it.
Just like those free inspections.
Exactly.
But what about us? What can we do to protect ourselves besides getting rid of standing water?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is when mosquitoes are most active,
When's that?
dusk and dawn.
Really?
Yeah, they love those times. So if you can avoid being outside, then
That's when I like to have coffee on the porch.
I know it's tough. But if you can't avoid those times, try wearing long sleeves and pants.
Long sleeves in the Tennessee summer?
I know, it's not ideal, but it does help.
What if I don't want to turn into a sauna?
Well, then there's always bug spray. DEEG is a really effective mosquito repellent.
Okay, so we can try to avoid mosquitoes, we can cover up, and we can use repellent, and if all else fails, we can call in the pros at Critter Wranglers.
Exactly. It's all about layering those strategies.
Right, for maximum protection.
But there's a bigger picture here too.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, we've been focusing on Critter Wranglers and their approach, but there are broader considerations when it comes to mosquito control.
Like what? Yeah, we've been talking a lot about all these different ways to fight mosquitoes, but what about the environmental impact of all this? Is that something we should be concerned about?
Absolutely. That's a really important consideration. And to be honest, Critter Wranglers doesn't really address it on their website. They say they use EPA-registered products, which means they've passed certain safety tests, but that doesn't tell us the whole story, right?
Right, because even if they're EPA approved, some products are probably still better for the environment than others. I mean, personally, I'd want to know what I'm spraying around my yard.
I think that's a fair point. Some pesticides are what they call broad spectrum, meaning they kill a wide range of insects, not just mosquitoes.
Oh.
While others are more targeted, so they focus specifically on mosquitoes. And those are obviously going to have less of an impact on beneficial insects, like pollinators.
So we want something that's more like a mosquito sniper, not a mosquito bomb that kills everything in sight.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And it's not just the product itself. The method of application matters too.
How so?
Well, think about it. Spraying a concentrated solution in specific areas where mosquitoes breed is going to be a lot different than just fogging an entire neighborhood.
Right, it's more precise.
Exactly.
But how do we, as consumers, know these things? I mean, pest control companies don't exactly advertise their pesticide recipes.
Yeah, that's true. I think the key is to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask the company what products they use and what their environmental impact is. A reputable company should be willing to have that conversation with you.
So we have to be proactive and advocate for the most eco-conscious options.
Exactly.
But what if you're not ready to hire a professional? What can we do on our own to make our yards less attractive to mosquitoes?
Well, there are a lot of natural things you can do. We've already talked about getting rid of standing water. But you can also encourage natural predators like bats and birds.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, put up some bat houses, some bird feeders, and you'll have your own little mosquito control team right in your backyard.
That's a great idea. What about plants? Are there any plants that can help repel mosquitoes?
Absolutely. Citronella, lavender, marigolds, those are all great options. They not only look and smell nice, but they can also help keep those mosquitoes away.
So it's all about taking a multifaceted approach. combining natural solutions with, smart choices about professional services.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've gone from being afraid of mosquitoes to understanding their life cycle, the risks they pose, and all the different ways to control them.
We've learned that professional help can be really valuable, especially with something as complex as the in-care system.
Right.
But we've also learned that personal responsibility is important too, and that we can all make eco-conscious choices to protect ourselves and the environment.
Exactly. And hopefully now we're all equipped to tackle those mosquitoes and enjoy a few itch-free evening out on the porch.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody. Until next time, stay curious. 2127.